Hello, welcome back to Three Orcs. This is David. Today, I want to go over a new article I wrote for Kron, the entranceway to Greenway Valley, the Valley of the Gnomes. In the Greyhawk campaign, there's many reasons why you want the gnomes involved. In the Temple of Elemental Evil campaign in the world of Greyhawk, there's many reasons why the gnomes were involved. In the politics of the Verbabanki and the activities and affairs of the Temple of Elemental Evil agents. Now, vital trade is coming from the Greenway Valley, and the various gnome clans from Greenway Valley, from Tolver and all the different villages, they send wagon caravans of gems, silver, and gold through the Viscounty to sell it at market. It's a vital resource for the city of Verbabank because most of the lords of the Viscounty don't have access to these mines. They're jealously guarded and secretly hidden from prying eyes of humans and even other gnome clans. They're highly prized that each clan family holds for generations as part of their legacy. And it's also part of their trade, from gem cutting to jewelry making and raw material to be sold in Divers, Greyhawk, and the city of Verbabank. Now, for the Temple of Elemental Evil, which is on the Second Rising of 578 Common Year, it would help to cut off any vital trade and can cause political confusion between the different relations of peoples throughout the lands. As you can remember, in the first time of the Temple of Elemental Evil Rising, all these political geographical countries came together to put a stop to the march of the armies of the Temple of Elemental Evil on the city of Verbabank, where they met finally at the Battle of Emeraldy Meadows and defeated them. If it wasn't for the combined forces of the elves of the Gnarly, the elves of Selene, the paladins and clerics of Veluna and Thurondi, the King Belvor sending Prince Thrommel down to head the army, and also, of course, the forces of Verbabank and the gnomes of the Greenway Valley, that they would not be able to defeat the Temple of Elemental Evil army that was approaching the city of Verbabank. They learned from their mistakes and realized that they're going to have to cut off a lot of these supplies and also cause political confusion so that they're not all working together. So far, they've been fairly successful because the borders of Selene has been closed. Queen Yolanda closed it off to all trade and diplomatic ties to the rest of the countries. They shut down their borders and they want no communication with anybody else. The only political activities coming out of Selene is the Knights of Luna. Now, the gnomes are very important strategically for their forces in defending the Viscounty and also vital trade. One thing the Elemental Evil agents are doing is raiding these caravans coming out of the Greenway Valley, heading to market to Verbabank City. They're staging these raids to cause political confusion between the Lords of Verbabank and the Free Assembly of the Kron Hills, which is the gnomes of the Greenway Valley, and the various clans there. So what they've been doing with banditry on the rise along the merchant roads throughout the Viscounty and the Gnarly Forest connecting to the Wild Coast and Divers, there's been a problem with trade lately. On top of that, the agents of Elemental Evil are out there setting up these false raids. They're dressing up as gnomes. They're raiding in disguise as mounted borderers. And then they also have certain gnome families involved. And also certain gnome members of a certain gnome clan is involved too. That's been recruited by the Temple of Elemental Evil to be behind a lot of these raids. A lot of this information I'm getting is from the Living Greyhawk modules. They're great modules that detail and expand the lands around the Temple of Elemental Evil. Just like the village of Hamlet is, Gnome has been expanded, and the Gnarly Forest, and the Elves of the Gnarly, the Gnarly Rangers, the Viscounty, the Greenway Valley, Selene, all these different towns in between. On the Verbabank Campaign Guide website that I offer for free online for anybody using their campaign, you'll see that all these lands, NPCs, organizations, and military leaders have been detailed and expanded, much like the village of Hamlet. So you can see when players are in the campaign and they're traveling to maybe the village of Hamlet or Knoll, they come across these raids and find evidence. And so they question the people that have been raided, like the gnomes that were just raided, or they come across the ruins of the carnage of a wagon train. The players can examine the evidence there, the tracks, the damage, the evidence of who could be behind this, and also question any bystanders or witnesses. They'll get very conflicting reports of the gnomes attacked, or the mounted borders came upon them and slaughtered them all and took and stole everything. And so this is getting to court in Verbabank, the Council of Lords, and the Viscount's hearing of this. And so the different various churches are involved too. like St. Cuthbert. In fact, one of the modules I'm referring to, two of the mounted borderers are in the infirmary of the Church of St. Cuthbert in the city of Riverbank being tended for their wounds. They just got raided by abandoned gnomes and a hill giant wearing this bejeweled necklace. And that's what they're reporting, so the players can investigate this to find out what's really going on. Anyway, these modules are good for flushing out the campaign area, all the towns and locations and organizations and groups. And so one of these locations is Kron, the Fortress of Kron, that connects the Viscounty of Riverbank and the Greenway Valley. To get there, go past the village south, past the village of Hamlet, then take a right turn at Sheer Knob, and you'll find yourself in Kron Fortress. As you'll see as I pull up the article here, what kind of fortress it is and what it protects and what it has to offer.
D&D had a huge impact on my life. I started playing in grade school after Star Wars came out in 1977, where I started a gaming club that led to D&D. At the time, I would be found in a classroom, keeping my head low, buried in a fantasy book. The D&D Blue Box set changed and consumed my life. Quickly after that, I bought the AD&D Player's Handbook by Gary Gygax, which had a massive influence on me. I highly recommend these books to read. Rise of the Dungeon Master, Gary Gygax and the Creation of D&D by David Kushner and Corinne Sadme. This graphic novel is a quick read, and it is a brief glimpse into the life of Gary Gygax, the creation of D&D, the controversy, and the effects that the game had on pulp culture and many lives that it touched. The next book is Empire of Imagination, Gary Gygax and the Birth of Dungeons & Dragons by Michael Whitwer. I found that this biography is a series of fictional vignettes about events in Gary Gygax's life, loosely connected by nods at context, which is more of a inspired by true events story than an actual biography. And the last one is Of Dice and Men, the story of Dungeons & Dragons and the people who play it by David Ewalt. This was a fun read about the history of Dungeons & Dragons. The author injects that some scenes from one of his own D&D campaign, which I liked, but sometimes it strayed a little bit too far from the subject and covered a lot other role-playing games. I was really happy to identify with a lot of the scenes in this book, and not just from playing the game. You can find my affiliate links down below.
Okay, let's take a look at my campaign website that you can use in your campaign. I follow the Wizards of the Coast fan content policy. You can use this in your campaign for free. And you come to this website, and it's written to be used at the table. So that way you can reference it easily. And there's a lot of hyperlinks that connect everything, including interactive maps. I'm going to scroll down past the splash screen down to the table of contents. And if you want to find any of these locations, you have to click on the atlas, and then you can click on areas like the Viscounty of Riverbank. And then these are all the locations in Riverbank that I've already finished. They're completed. If anybody ever needed any more details for these locations or more locations added to these towns, just work with us on Discord. That's where we collaborate every day, all day long, and we work on this daily, making more articles and locations and NPCs and organizations. So the place I want to look at is Greenway Valley. These are the locations of the Kron Forest that we have so far. The Kron Fortress, the location in Living Greyhawk is called Kron, but for me to call it just Kron on the website, it's hard to search for because it's only 4 letters, especially on the interactive map. And I wanted to add more detailed title to it, so I call it Kron Fortress. But I could rename this later depending on our feedback on our Discord channel or Patreon. So the Kron Fortress stands as a symbol. Kron Fortress is a stone fortress crafted by gnomes a long time ago. It's a gateway to Greenway Valley. It commands this narrow pass between Greenway Valley and the Viscounty of Riverbank, the gnome lands. It's constructed entirely of stone. It blends seamlessly with the rugged terrain, intricate stonework. Behind the fortress that guards the village of Kron, it thrives as sprawling network of burrows, cottages, and workshops, and trade and civic life. And I have some quotes here and dialogue that you can use to help roleplay in your campaign. And below that is a basic outline of what the fortress consists of. And so when your players are playing this game and you decide, we want to get behind. The players are in this campaign and they're trying to put a stop to these bandit raids. They're getting more evidence from these raids that they're investigating. And they might get some evidence that the cause of some of these raids are coming from Greenway Valley. They might have some questions for leaders of Greenway Valley, the Assembly of Free Gnomes, and maybe get some answers. And so this is one reason why they would come to Kron to get into Greenway Valley to get some answers. And I felt that as a dungeon master, if the players ever did decide to do that, it'd be good to have it keyed, much like the Village of Hamlet. I don't necessarily feel that all player groups and all campaigns will come this way, but you never know. And this is supposed to be more of a sandbox type campaign, an epic version of the Temple of Elemental Evil. It'd be good to have it keyed just in case. You know, all dungeon masters out there don't have time to do what I'm doing, so that's why I'm doing it for you. Me and other dungeon masters on our Discord work on this every day trying to get this stuff done. And there's a lot of dungeon masters running this campaign, and their players are going off in a lot of different directions. Not only that, but a lot of the dungeon masters are starting the campaign from different locations. I start mine at the city of Riverbank. Others start theirs in the Wild Coast. Others start theirs in Divers and make their way through the forest to get to Village of Hamlet. Some start in Selene. There's a bunch of elves in the group. You know, some start in the gnarly forest. So you could have a bunch of gnomes that come from Greenway Valley. Or maybe one of the players is from Greenway Valley, and they want to come here for anchors. So you got this fortress the players will come across. The very first thing they're going to see is the Kron Fortress image, and that's what it looks like at the front gates as you get. As you can see, it guards that narrow passage through the range into the valley. I have a description of what the place looks like. There's not a lot of detail except for on the right side, there's the Jeep Jibbleclap. He's the Kron Fortress commander. If you put your cursor over his name, he has his own full dedicated article with his stats and all that, in case you need it. This location. I focus more on the history in this particular article. So you have the history of the fortress, the history of trade and the tensions of Riverbank, all these rumors I've been talking about, like disputes over taxation and trade regulations. Bonk nobles views the Greenway Valley as a subject territory rather than an independent gnome enclave. That's a problem. Human patrols of the mounted borderers withdrew, forcing Kron to rely entirely on gnome militias and allies like the gnarly rangers. So Viscount Wilfric did order all the mounted borderers back from patrolling the borders of the Viscounty. And that's a big problem because they're the ones responsible for stopping bandit raids on the merchant roads. So they're pretty much on their own now. And then many businesses once catering to humans and elves have shuttered, focusing instead on internal trade. Now, governance. So the Than of Kron is Jeet. He's a past veteran of conflicts. He fought in the Battle of Emerald Meadows. He's on the Kron Council of Elders, and he's part of the Free Alliance of the Kron Hills. And if you put your cursor over that, there's a whole article on the Free Alliance of the Kron Hills. It does list all the Elven clan. And it does list all the gnome clans. And each clan has their own article and their own NPCs too. So you can actually develop campaign plot lines and stories using these clans in your campaign. Scrolling down, some of the articles I already wrote for this location, like the Kron Market, 2 inns. One's Glopna's Stone Inn, the other one is the Gilded Burrow. And then there's a gnome trade outpost called Tolva's Waypoint. And at the bottom is sub-articles for this main article. But we're going to scroll up to the top right and take a look at what the valley looks like beyond the fortress. It's something I've pulled up here that looks generally like what the Greenway Valley would look like until it broadens into a wider valley beyond that turn. Stone and cunning built Kron, and neither shall falter. I quoted that from Jimbo Clap. I got a map here. Some of these maps, a lot of the maps I make myself using Wonder Draft, and you'll get those on my Patreon. All my normal maps, regular resolution, like 10 megabytes, are free. You can use in your campaign. But the higher resolution versions of it, if you want a higher res for purpose for like your VTT game or you want to print it up, I offer those on my Patreon for Patreon members only. Population, I got that from Old Living Greyhawk material. The notable gnome clans is Clan Tolvar. Clan Tolvar is the leader of all the gnomes from the city of Tolvar to the west side of the Greenway Valley. Another clan is Clan Keeleen. Clan Keeleen is actually based in Shirnob, which is outside the gates of Kron Fortress. It's in the Viscounty side. There's a module on the DM's Guild for that village too, with a lot of quests and NPCs. Also, Prince Jim. He's the gnome diplomat and mediator. He's on the Council of Lords. He's in the city of Riverbank. He passes through here often. He's got his own article too. Everything you need to know about him. And he's in a lot of Living Greyhawk quests as well. And he can be used in a lot of different plots, quests, and storylines, which is wonderful. The notable locations again. Now, the notable locations on the right is linkable. So the Kron Market has its own article, so we'll go there first. Now the Kron Market, it's basically a description of what the place looks like. Trade, market, stalls, merchant carts, things like that. And then the next section will be different sections of the Kron Market, the High Warrens, the Tunnel Bazaar, the back alleys. I gave examples of different vendors there that you can use for role-playing, so you can actually expand on that. I even added a few dialogues there to help open up the dialogue trade in your campaign. Trading economics, what's going on with the market and its conditions. And I always add a lot of adventuring hooks at the bottom of a lot of my articles, and here's some little hooks you could use in your campaign if you wanted to. And the top right-hand corner is notable figures. So we have Mara. She's a postmistress of the bazaar, and she's got some dialogue too. The Whispering Merchant, he's a ghost of the back alley, so he's interesting. I can always add a lot more to this if I wanted to, but this is one of those locations that don't see a lot of traffic in a campaign, and generally I believe this is the kind of location that players won't spend a lot of time at, that they'll stop in, maybe spend the night at the inn, and continue on to Tolvar. But as a dungeon master, you might want to get a lot of their answered here. It's up to you. It's a good place to meet the leader here, Jeet. He knows a lot about what's going on, a lot of politics. So basically that's what the market is. So let's go back to Kron Fortress and scroll down to Glopna Stone Inn. What's great about this place is they can spend the night here. It's a cozy refuge for gnomes and halflings. You know, it's very short. Humans are going to have to duck and probably won't fit in a bed because everything here is gnome-sized. Everything halfling and gnome-sized. It's a really nice place. As you can see on the right-hand side, it's pretty cool. I fully detailed out the interior and exterior, the courtyard and stables, and the cozy, intimate space with low-beamed ceilings, a hearth, round tables, thick wooden chairs, dialogue again with Glopna, rooms, you know, what it costs to stay here, politics and intrigue that's here, and some adventuring hooks as well if you need some ideas. On the right-hand side, if you scroll up, is Glopna herself, her full personality and motivations. Also the bartender, if you might need one of them. And then also the house bard. You always have to have a gnome bard there, and you can roleplay him with his personality, motivation, and background. And going further down is a list of example food and drink for the inn. Interesting dishes you can roleplay with to make the players feel more engaged, like they're really there. Give this place some flavor. And on top of all that, my famous menus I always create for the Patreons. So this is in regular resolution you can use in your campaign. I have a higher resolution version on the Patreon if you want to print it up or you just want a higher res. These lower resolutions are good enough for online use, that's for sure. As you can see, the description of the dishes and the artwork has a lot of vibe to this place. It makes it feel like you're engaged with this. It's very thematic to this inn. Okay, let's go back to the location of Kron Fortress, and we'll scroll down to the next location, which is the Gilded Burrow. Now, this is a richer, higher-end place that costs a lot more money to stay here if the players feel like spending some money. It's a wonderful place. It's a very fun, thematic place to stay at. It's definitely something different from the other more homey type inn. And this caters to a higher end clientele like lords and things like that. And you got a really pretty a really pretty server here that they can engage with. Her name is Miss Fell. And also you have Jibs, the enforcer. And there's a lot of politics and adventuring hooks here too, and I also have food and drink on the right. I didn't create an actual rendition of the menu to print up, but at least you have food and drink on the right. If anybody needs one of those, just let me know. I can get on that for you and get it added to the website and the Patreon. And the last location is all the way to the bottom, Tolvar's Waypoint. This place is pretty neat because it's a trade outpost. Players tend to go to only several places in every town they ever visit. They always stay at an inn. They get room and food and rumors and henchmen. And they always go to a trader's place to buy and sell stuff. This is perched beyond the mighty gates of the Kron Fortress, along the Merchant Road, as it enters Greenway Valley. This is run by Clan Tolvar, and that's what it looks like on the right. It's run by Ren. That's his nickname. That's a fortified trading hub. That's what it looks like on the right. And it's a bustling market. And it talks about what they sell and trade and what for. And more dialogue too. And at the bottom is a detailed description of the NPC that runs this place. And also, there's more politics and things to think about when they come here, how you negotiate with different merchants, what they think of it, and how they react. They got rivalries and conflicts with how they deal with that. And at the bottom, more adventure hooks, in case you need something going on. On the right-hand side, I tend to do this quite often, to try to at least, add commonly traded goods listed on the right. Sometimes I add prices, sometimes I don't. This time I don't have any prices. It's just a general list of typically things they offer at the store in case you need to know as a dungeon master. It helps out. It has some cool descriptions too, and it gives you some ideas you might not have thought of. So let's go back to the main campaign guide, and I want to show you the map of what we're talking about here. Visually speaking, you really need to know what's going on. If we go to the front splash screen, you'll see Hamlet in the middle. And it's at a crossroads along the long road. There's the Edders to the north. You know, a lot of these names, locations, these geographical areas are from Living Greyhawk, and Anna Myers adds them to her map. And so when she did that, that kind of cemented somewhat canon to these locations from Living Greyhawk. I look at Living Greyhawk as semi-canon, like a possible future, because I run my campaign with the original Temple of Elemental Evil module, 578 common year. And so Living Greyhawk was like 594 common year and up. And I know there's a lot of DMs, especially on my Discord, that runs like 598 common year Living Greyhawk in their campaigns. But they still find a lot of use of this website because, like I said, it does have these locations, NPCs, and detailed villages and shops and organizations. You can use it in their campaign. Certain NPCs might not have been born yet. That's the only problem. I mentioned that in every article, so that way you're aware. I'm more concerned for my campaign, which is basically 578 common year. And I usually cut off any lore after that. Sometimes I might add a little bit more as a possible future. Now, the low road and high road is Hamlet to Nob. I think I need to edit this map and get rid of the Temple of Elemental Evil thing there. Because I have this pop-up here, which if you click on DM only locations, it actually pops up more dungeons. This isn't just the Temple of Elemental Evil dungeon. No, this is an epic campaign. There's a lot of dungeons. The players can't do anything at the Temple of Elemental Evil, or Nob especially, until at least 5th level. So you need to get them to do things and get more engaged in the campaign and what's going on. Peel back the onions of this mystery of where the bandits are coming from and who's organizing them. And so, as Gary Gygax stated in a lot of interviews and the module, he expects the Dungeon Master to expand the module, not just run it from the pages. It's not a dungeon slog. And he couldn't do it because it would have been 1,000 pages. So he said that there's more outposts out there like the Moat House. Wizards of the Coast put out Apocalypse module where they took that idea and they came up with a really good idea. And I like it a lot. I don't particularly like the module, but they had a really good idea. Each of the sub-temples have an outpost of fire, earth, water, and air. These little icons are like tiny dungeons for these different temples. There's one on top of the Edders. It's a tower. It's a really cool place. There's a river, water temple there in the Fens of Tor. And then over here is the Sacred Stone Monastery. It's an old abandoned monastery. And the Earth Temple took that over. Really cool place to go to. In fact, one of the Living Greyhawk modules has a lot to do with this location. And I run that in my campaign. Also, the Sheer Knob to the south. If you go south from Hamlet, along the long road, it runs from the city of Riverbank all the way down to Selene. You take that to Sheer Knob, which is a whole nother module that I sell in DM's Guild, and it's also free version of it, interactive map on this website, but I'm not going to look at that right now. You walk through that place, stay the night if you want, interact. There's a whole bunch of quests there too. The giants are raiding, Blackthorn orcs and the like. Then you get to Kron, and that's where the location is. As you can see, past Kron is the Greenway Valley. And there's Tolvar at the very end on the west side, and that's the capital of the Greenway Valley of the Gnomes. And Clan Tolvar is in charge. There's like 4 clans detailed on this website, fully described. History, background, lore, NPCs, everything you need to know. Including symbols, heraldry, coat of arms. This is awesome. I like that kind of detail in the campaign. The side of the wagon shows their symbol, so you know what clan we're talking about. That's kind of cool. I do that with all the monsters too. The orcs and gnolls, they all have clan symbols. It's pretty neat. Any player that investigates the scene can get some clues like that. It helps a lot to bring the campaign to life. If you go south, I haven't done Gallows Corner yet, but there's Sphyrk on the border of Selene. And that's where the gift of beauty was ambushed. And that's missing. The gift to Queen Yolanda to get her to open the borders up again. It's a big deal. The cult of the Temple of Elemental Evil Agents orchestrated that raid using the gnolls from the Kron Fortress, which is right there. There's the Kron Fortress, by the way. In fact, I've put my cursor over it. There you go. The Jagged Fangs, Kron Fort, and the Earth Temple and bandits in the area. They raided that and took that gift of beauty, which is a carved treasure chest. It's pretty cool. Okay, so that pretty much wraps up the location of Kron. I just want to do a quick video of why I created it and what it could be used for in the campaign. I wrote several articles about it on my 3 Orcs blog and also on my Patreon. You know, reasons why you need this location and what you would do with it. This is just a video version of that. I currently finished Nob. Nob is done. I just need to now create a DM's Guild version of it, module PDF. And currently I'm working on a Lizardman village in the Fens of Tor. The Fens of Tor is really cool because it's a location that the players have to get through to go to many of these adventures that are in the modules. They would encounter these lizardmen raiding or hunting groups out there, and then they'll find out what they're doing too, because they're up to something. The bandits crews and the pirate crews hanging out in Nob, they just heard about it too. And so you got a 3 or 4 way going to that dungeon in the middle of the Fens of Tor, these ancient Sul ruins. It's pretty cool. And I'm working on that. That's going to be my first actual full module that I'm going to publish. I've been working on that lately. At the same time, I'm working on Twilight Falls. One of my dungeon masters that wrote for Dungeon and Dragon magazine and also Living Greyhawk did a full write-up on Twilight Falls. I also had the write-up from Living Greyhawk too. So I take all that information and I rewrite the whole thing to make it look good. In fact, I'll show you what I did so far. Let's see, I don't think. So let's go down to the Atlas and go to Verplank Viscounty and go to Twilight Falls. And I'll click on the article there. This is what I did so far today as the main screen. Now I need to create all the locations in town and all the NPCs there. And so far I got this all done. A lot of history, local geography, cultures and society, law, order, governance. I'm going to do a whole nother video on this too. As you can see, it's quite a big article, even demographics. When I get some of these locations done in town and create a map for this place, I'll be able to publish that as a module. And you can run that as part of your Temple of Elemental Evil campaign. All right, I've been going on long enough in this video about Kron, the Fortress of Kron going to Greenway Valley.
Did you enjoy video? Consider tossing support on my Patreon. It's best way to support orcs. If you would like to see more content, subscribe and post comments below. It better not be bad.
Okay, so that wraps up my video on Kron Fortress going to Greenway Valley. I hope you like what you've seen so far. If you want to join us on Discord, we're always there every day talking about this and collaborating and working on this, and we welcome you there. Also, we're on Patreon, so you can help support the project. I send out reports, articles, and artwork to all the members. And also on my YouTube channel and my blog. So thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to showing you what I will create next. May your dice ever roll true.